Hey everybody, we'll stand and start this with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks everybody for coming. We are very fortunate. We probably have the most knowledgeable, when it comes to public education, the most knowledgeable people in the state. They came today to answer questions for us and kind of steer us in the right directions. They didn't have to do this, and we are very grateful. But I will turn it over to State Superintendent Critchfield.
Thank you so much for the invitation and opportunity to come and be here today. I care about this community, and you can see by the attendance of your school boards that they value education and care, and what a commentary on where your community is for all of you to be here as well. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to talk and answer questions. There's a few things that I just, by way of housekeeping, wanted to put out there. We're here because your boards want to do the very best job that they can. I applaud them for that. There's no other area in the state that is dealing with the challenges of a deconsolidation, a 10-member board. It's a very unique situation. And even for those of us that have been involved in education for a long time, this is new to us as well. And so I commend them for getting together so that all together we can address the questions and identify a framework whereby your community can conduct its business. So our purpose today is not to come in and say whether or not we think the decisions that are being made are right or wrong. That's not what we're here to do. That is the authority of your elected board members to decide what's the right course and where you all want to take the deconsolidation and those decisions. Our goal is to answer questions, to provide you the tools so that you then go forward in the process. And recognizing that in the best attempts to get the right information to everyone at the same time, some things can be lost in translation or misunderstood. And we appreciate that we could come, and I brought friends that I have worked with for a long time, and I want to just really briefly share kind of how this came about, getting a group to drive up last night and come today. Many of us were at another education meeting a couple weeks ago, well, it's been about a month ago now, I think, and sharing just different challenges around the state and things that we're looking at. And after the business was finished for that meeting, I said, if anyone in this room is interested in helping me go up to Grangeville and work with some good people, stick around. Everybody stuck around. And so we appreciate them coming, and I thank your board chairs and your superintendents for reaching out as well. We all care about the same thing. We all have the same goal and the same outcome, and I'm just really excited about the discussion that we can have today. We put together a little bit of an agenda, but honestly, it's just to provide a structure. I'm going to look to the chairs and the board members on where we go with the flow. It's up to you. We're here to help and provide those resources. I would first like to, if we could, just kind of start on the end with Jonathan and maybe introduce Tyler, Troy, our board chairs. Do you want to have everybody introduce themselves? What would you prefer? Maybe that would help for our travelers as well.
That'd be fine. We'll just go around the table. Who wants to start?
Hi, I'm Amanda Bush, and I am the interim superintendent for the Grangeville School District and the principal of Grangeville High School.
I'm Melissa Lane. I'm the Zone 3 board trustee for Grangeville School District.
I'm B. Edwards. I'm a school board member.
Tyler Harrington. I represent Zone 1.
Roy Farmer, I represent Zone 5.
Phil Gore, I'm the Director of Board Training and Development for the Idaho School Boards Association.
I'm Wendy Moore. I'm the Superintendent at Genesee School District.
And I'm Greg Wilson. I'm the Chief of Staff at the State Department of Education.
Good morning. I'm Paul Stark. I'm the Executive Director of the Idaho Education Association.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Hankin. I'm the Policy Director for the State Board of Education.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Gillen. I am the President of the Idaho Association of School Business Officials.
TJ Weller, Trustees for Zone 4 of the Clearwater School District.
Troy Biesecker, Zone 2, Clearwater Valley School District.
Aaron Teets, Zone 3, Clearwater Valley.
Caitlin Tao, Zone 5, Clearwater Valley School District.
Vincent Martinez, Building Principal, Clearwater Valley Junior Senior High School, Interim Superintendent, Clearwater Valley School District.
Wonderful, thank you. And again, thank you to the community for being here today. Based on conversations that I've had and other questions, I thought the first place to start would be understanding how you can gather together separately. What does the meeting structure look like? Again, you're in a very unusual position in the state where for now you have a 10-member board, but 2 boards with 2 superintendents. And so perhaps a way to kick that off would be, is there a specific question, or how would you like us to address what the laws are around how you can gather? The bottom line being, you can meet and you can have conversations. How do we provide the information so you know how to do that?
I guess the main thing is, we have 2 boards that are starting to separate, right? And I think as we move along, we're going to want to operate more independently. And so what do you guys suggest? I mean, yeah, we meet together, but how much flexibility do we have in operating separately, and then maybe coming together for the big decisions?
Allison?
Hi, folks. So I was actually a part of the team that supported the process when you all were working with the State Board and the State Department to apply for division. So where it gets sort of tricky is what state law says versus what your division plan says. So your division plan was approved by the State Board of Education, and in that division plan it specifies that you'll have a joint board for this school year to support the operation of the existing school district. What the law says is that as soon as the community voted in favor of your division plan, because the board had already signed off on that division plan, then the state was required to create your 2 separate boards and 2 separate districts legally. So legally, you are 2 separate boards with separate districts, with separate superintendents, but your division plan also requires you to operate as a single 10-member board relative to the business of the district that is closing. Does that help?
But let's put a little finer point on that. And Phil will have you help here too. So I'm just going to restate, Allison, what I think that you just said. For the purposes of doing business with the existing district, both boards must meet together for those decisions. But the boards can also meet separately and individually to have work sessions, workshops, talk in the community, discuss what they want to bring together for the full board to vote on until the time they are separate. Did I get that right?
Really, really close.
Okay.
So I would say yes to all of that, but because you are legally 2 separate boards, you can vote on issues related to the development of your new district, not the existing district, but your newly created district. So if you want to vote on something that's happening with that district, you can meet and vote on that because you legally exist as 2 separate entities.
but we still need to follow all open law protocol, still post those meetings, still make them public, only doing it in public.
Yes. Yeah. So you essentially are a part of two boards right now, right? You are a 10-member board and you are a 5-member and a 5-member. And all of you are board members of two separate boards at the moment.
Do we need to use the same board clerk for both groups, or can there be a different board clerk assigned to the different districts?
That's pretty easy. Do you want to take
No, go ahead.
We have lots of boards that share clerks, so you're okay in that regard. You can use one clerk or two clerks, doesn't matter.
And I would also add that at those meetings, you can designate someone to take the minutes. It could be your superintendent that's taking the minutes. And so in many cases around the state, the board clerk doesn't look like a traditional board clerk. And so you can designate someone, it could be a different someone at those meetings, so long as somebody's there that is posted the meeting, is taking the minutes. And so you can be creative in how you fulfill that board clerk assignment. Phil?
I think it was great for this topic to come up because you will find very quickly that the key to working well together is strong, healthy relationships with each other. You need to know each other. And Superintendent Critchfield mentioned the idea of having workshops, work sessions. The next few months afford you the opportunity to meet together as teams, the 6 of you, your superintendent and board, to get to know each other well, which is very helpful. It makes things happen quicker and with less drama. I would underscore, drama is the enemy of student success. Drama is the enemy of families, communities, businesses, and schools. So in order to reduce drama, there are probably 2 or 3 steps you could take quickly. And one would be to have a conversation about your priorities. That sort of gets at, why are the individual trustees serving? Why is your superintendent principal serving? What is it that you would like to accomplish? What helps bring you to a sense of a shared vision? Like, you will struggle immensely if you don't have a similar vision. That doesn't mean that people don't have differences of opinions, perspectives, personality, dreams, but somehow the team of 6 has to coalesce around, where do we really want to go? What are our priorities? What might success look like? What needs to be done right now? And what can wait 6 months or maybe a year or more? Like, being able to have a shared sense of priorities and timelines will expedite your opportunity to lead well. One more thing is just, I would underscore probably the most important thing I can say to you today. Individual trustees have 0 authority. Only the board has authority. It may be disappointing, but individual trustees, I'm a former school board member, Superintendent Critchfield is a former local school board member. We all had to learn that we don't always get our way, and we have 0 authority to tell anyone what to do. Only the board has authority. And that can be difficult, but as we learn that, accept that, okay, I've got to learn to work well with others. And as a school board member, I have to learn to count to 3. Just because I have a brilliant idea doesn't mean the board shares my brilliant idea. So we learn to build support legally for our brilliant ideas. And I would just end with saying thank you, all of you, for stepping up and serving. School board service is not for the faint of heart, but you can do this.
Thank you, Phil. A couple of notes related to who and when you can talk to as far as your board service is concerned. There are laws in Idaho that restrict how many board members you can talk to about one particular topic. So, Troy, someone in the community approaches you about something and you're thinking about putting it on the agenda for what will be the CV board. Let's pretend that, you know, it's very specific to the board that's, you know, that you've got here. Because it's a 5-member board, you can't talk to more than one person, because at 3 people, that's where you have your vote. So you can talk to other board members. So if you were to call up Caitlin and say, Caitlin, I've been thinking about this. Have you heard this in the community? I want to put this, you know, is this an issue that we think we want to talk about on the board? Completely, or whoever it is that you choose. Now, if Caitlin decides to call TJ and talk about the same thing, under the law, that's considered to be a serial meeting, because you're talking to, even though you didn't specifically talk to more than one person, it was on the same topic. But if you called up TJ on a completely different issue to talk to him about that, that's completely fine. So you can talk to different board members about different things. Just make sure, you know, that you're not then having a game of telephone that way. You can talk to anybody in the community at any time about anything. That's the whole system of why you were elected. And we want the community and the public, and I think you got elected believing that you could interact and should be interacting with the public. There are no violations of that. You could show up in someone's living room that had 10 people that wanted to talk to you about something. You can do that. That is not a violation of anything. It's the people that have the authority to make the decisions are the ones we have to be careful of. Aaron.
So if there's a member of the community who wants to lobby for a specific item or agenda, is there anything that stops them from talking to all 5 of us?
No, there isn't.
Okay, thank
So
you.
anybody in the community can talk to any board member. A community member doesn't have the authority to make the decisions. So it's only those who could decide. There are occasions, it's not just school boards, where you've had board members that decide to get together for coffee, 3 of you, in the morning, and you're going to talk about something coming up. You know, you just meet casually for breakfast. Don't do that, because that's a quorum of the board where you have enough votes there that a decision could be made. And so the laws are not to keep you from having the discussion. The laws are to make sure that the public can see the decisions that you're making, that the decision making happens in public rather than, you know, you're getting together to make those decisions outside of the public's view.
One word of caution, while the superintendent's right, we need to talk to community members and so forth. Be careful that you don't say something that obligates the district in any way as an individual, because number one, you don't have authority to do that, but especially important with personnel issues. So if someone comes to you, Aaron, and says, you know, that teacher so-and-so, I think they're just doing a lousy job, don't bite. Don't chime in and say, oh, you're right, or don't say, I'll look into this, because it's not your job to look into it, and it can be actually used as a liability against the district in the future if trustees engage in personnel-related conversations about performance.
But you can go to your superintendent and have those conversations. That's the right person.
So that was going to be my follow-up in terms of superintendent talking to the 5 trustees on the same topic at different times. That's okay?
Yes.
Okay.
And a superintendent can send an email to all of the trustees. There was a broken pipe, as an example. And so an email goes out to all of the trustees, or we couldn't get the bus started this morning. We're going to get kids late to school. What you don't want to do as trustees is reply to everybody on the same email. If you have a follow-up question, either individually email the superintendent back or give them a call. Because again, you're all on the same email where because you have a great authority to be making decisions in your community relative to resources and personnel. You just want to avoid anything where you're all coming together on one topic in any form. Others up here, Paul?
One of the things I've seen sometimes is just in small communities in particular, that there can be arise conflicts of interest, meaning you're talking about something as a board that affects someone that you know personally, or somehow you have some connection to, families and things like that. This happens all over Idaho in small communities. Your obligation in that is to disclose that in the open meeting. So you come to the open meeting, you say, hey, look, this has to do with, I've known this person since grade school. We went to grade school together, and I just need to disclose that. But I don't, if it's true, you say, then I don't feel like this creates a conflict for me. I think I can judge the merits of the situation fairly and honestly and openly. But failure to disclose can be a problem. So if you find yourself in that situation as trustees, just disclose it, and that usually clears it up.
My chair was slanted. Other comments?
There's so much to learn about school board service, even if we've been on a school board for a long time. You never know what can come up from time to time. I think when in doubt, talk with your board chair and/or talk with your superintendent. When it comes to emails, if the superintendent, and they learn this, right, only send blind carbon copy to the full board. That way we don't accidentally hit reply all. As you go along, there will be a variety of concerns, and it's hard to know sometimes what is a customer complaint versus a community concern. As school board members, we can't solve customer complaints. Let me give you an example. I have a third grade son, and I'm concerned as a board member or I'm concerned as a member of the public that the teacher's not letting the kids use the restroom enough. That is not a community concern. That's a customer, that's an individual concern. And so if we become aware somebody's got an issue with a third grade teacher, first of all, we say, have you talked to the teacher about that? Second, we say, Vincent, I just wanted to give you a heads up. I heard a complaint about the third grade teacher. We're not solving the problem, but we're helping the parents solve the problem, right? So Mr. Martinez will look into that. The parent is now empowered to talk to the teacher and work together. Just knowing that we can't solve individual people's complaints, problems, we can be concerned. We can share that with our superintendent. We can help them solve their problem. That's different than a community concern. A community concern is when we've heard something 3, 4, 5 times, we're starting to get a different picture, then the board may need to speak with the superintendent and say, hey, this seems to be a community concern. Very related to this, just as that, again, the idea as an individual board member, we are elected as a representative from our community and from our zone, but we need to serve as a trustee. That word is important. It implies stewardship. It implies fiscal responsibility. It implies having a bigger picture of the district as a whole and all of the students and all of the families and all of the community. It's not just our zone that we're there to represent. We're there to represent the best interest of the whole district. So we have to weigh that in our minds sometimes as we have conversations and make decisions. What is in the best interest of the whole district, not just my family, friends, neighbors? We're not a mini legislature. We're trustees of a school system.
So one of the things I would encourage you as a superintendent and as a board is to remember that you have a chain of command. And as Phil talked about, that if you have a parent complaint, encourage them to please talk to the teacher first and then go up the chain, being the building principal and then the superintendent or the counselor, however it is in your district or who they need to talk to. The other thing is when you are talking about, make sure that your superintendent is informed. If you're hearing something from the community more than once, you definitely want to make sure that you are notifying your superintendent to give them a heads up, just like it is our responsibility as a superintendent to make sure that we're giving you a heads up. If there's something brewing in the school or we're dealing with a hot topic, I will often call my board chair and say, listen, I just want to give you, this is an FYI. I just want to give you this information. This is something I'm dealing with. We're hoping we can take care of it internally. But if not, please, if you're hearing things out in the community, please refer them back to me. Let us take care of it at our end before you intervene. So just, it works both ways. So you just want to make sure that you're not blindsiding your superintendent, and as a superintendent, you want to make sure that you're not blindsiding your board when 75 people show up at a board meeting and you've been dealing with this issue for months, and the board looks at you like, this is the first we've heard of it. So you just want to make sure that you have those lines of communication open. And it is very, very important that you get into the habit, if you email, to do the blind carbon copy, or to send out individual emails to your board, and to make sure that you're responding just to the superintendent, not a group of people when you're doing that, if you're going to respond at all. A lot of times my board members will just send back a thumbs up showing me that they received the email. That's all I need to know, is that they read it and they got the message.
Let's just talk for a minute about what happens if for some reason there was a violation. We are imperfect people. We didn't write the laws. We're just trying to do our best job, and we approach it from a good place. Sometimes things happen. Okay, so somebody identifies, hey, you guys weren't supposed to do that, or something happened on an email. There is a way to remedy that. And I mean, I can discuss it, but so that everyone doesn't get sick of me in the next hour. Anyone else want to talk about that? Phil, you've got that? You want to talk about what the remedy is?
What is?
Well, if for some reason there was a violation of the open meeting law.
Allison will do a more specific job on that than I will. I'll give you a general answer. She'll give you a specific answer.
Essentially, if you mess up, right, you own it. I think that's the fastest, easiest way for me to describe how you correct the issue, right? In the next possible board meeting, sometimes folks will even call a special board meeting if their next board meeting is a ways out, right? You indicate what you did in terms of breaking open meeting law, and you have an open discussion about the item that was apparent, right? And then you publicly make the decision again. So you essentially null and void whatever it was that happened and correct as quickly as possible. So be aware too that it may be a member of your board or your superintendent that identifies that violation of open meeting law. It may be the media, it may be a member of your community, whoever it is, as soon as it's clear that you may have, correct it, right? And one of the recommendations that I make, I think that others would agree with, is if there's a possibility you did, treat it as such. Don't sort of say, well, we don't really think we violated open meeting law. Like if there's a possibility, just be like, you know what, you might be right, we might have violated it, so we're gonna put that out in public, because then it just ends the discussion of whether or not you have, right? If you then take it and make it public, as opposed to digging through the blue book and really looking to see, like, did we actually, or did we not, or are we okay, or are we not, right? There are very few circumstances in which that will serve you well. So that would just be a recommendation related.
And you don't need to overthink it. I don't bring that up to have have you 10 times check that something happened. It happens. It happens around the state. A couple months ago, someone brought something to my attention that I was a part of a meeting of, and I swim around in this stuff all the time. And we went back and said, we're going to revote on this. If there was a question, so you're essentially saying, okay, we thought that what we did at the time was completely legal. I guess we missed a step. We're going to go back and we're going to revote. And you just do it in public. Things happen, and don't, it's not something that, I think you need to spend all your time worrying about, but in case it does.
I was just going to say, it is one thing, I always look at it as a good leader admits their mistakes. We are not perfect as a school board or as a superintendent. And I think if you have the opportunity to rectify something and say, you know what, we screwed up, we overlooked this, and, you know, acknowledge it, it is much easier not to make that mistake again. So I think it sets a lot for the community if you are willing to say, you know, we don't know it all and we're going to continue to work forward to make it a great experience for our community. Just admit it and move on. Rectify the situation and continue to move on as a board.
Aaron?
If we have items on our meeting agenda, but we want an item that's late on the agenda dealt with early, so because it might affect later or other items on the agenda, can we rearrange the agenda for a meeting without violating the laws?
You can, I'll take it first. At the beginning of the meeting, you make a motion to update your agenda, and item number 10 is now going to be item number 1. And you call for a vote, and if the board agrees to reorder your agenda, you're good to go. Anybody disagree with me?
But you don't want to make it a common practice,
Oh,
because
no.
people are coming to these meetings. They might see something's number 10, so they might come an hour into the meeting, and now you've moved that up, and so they'll miss what they came to hear. So you want to make it an exception, not a rule.
That is a good ad. It is possible, and you would want to have a reason. Someone's come from out of town, their time frame, or we weren't aware that we needed to know X before we voted on Y. I mean, you want to substantiate why you'd want to change it, but it is possible.
I think it's also important to note that requires a vote. So that is not just a like, hey, we want to move it.
Yeah.
It requires a vote of your board. And that is helpful in that then if somebody's concerned about, right, but these folks may be coming for that agenda item at that point in the meeting, that board member can speak up, and then there's the possibility to say, okay, wait, how do we do this then, right? If another option is, you know, if you are looking at rearranging and you know that there are community members that care about that item, you can always delay it to another board meeting, right? If it's not absolutely needing to be decided right now, you're better off making sure your community can be involved than not. You're not legally required to do that, but, right, I think that the separation here is legally, yes, you can move things around on your agenda as long as they were posted as an item on your agenda prior to the agenda going out, right? You can't just add a discussion to the agenda that wasn't prior posted. And you can do that vote, but there's a bigger issue of how you're communicating out what your board is discussing to the community.
Isn't there certain criteria to do that? Like I watched Orofino's school board meeting when they were voting on masks, and they added that to the meeting, and somehow they did it at the beginning of the agenda, but it like made it null. This was in 2020. I don't know, is there criteria to move the item?
Not that I'm aware of. It's just, it requires a majority of the board to vote to change the agenda.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is, are you moving things or are you adding an item, right? So the issue is if they were adding an item that they did not previously have posted as a discussion in their agenda, then they have not posted their agenda properly. So even in the case of like, you can make emergency changes to your agenda, but that does have to be posted 24 hours in advance. So you don't have to do it way, way far out, but 24 hours ahead, the topics that you're going to discuss have to be posted. So I think that's probably where that violation was, that they added it without having it be a part of the posted agenda.
Board members have a handout that talks about your roles and responsibilities. And before we move away from this topic, I just wanted to mention the rights and limitations of board members. It's important that you recognize you have the right to sufficient information on every item that comes before the board. And as a dutiful, responsible trustee, if you don't feel fully informed, if you don't feel like you have enough background, enough context, please don't vote. Ask for the item to be tabled either to a future meeting or for the administration to provide additional information so that you can be fully informed. That's very important. You don't want to vote on an item that you don't have enough information, context, understanding. So talk things through. If you are a parent that has children in the school district where you serve, you have a right to advocate for your child and his or her education. So don't ever shy away from talking with a teacher, a principal. I'm here as a parent, not as a board member, and I'm concerned about this, or I would like to ask you to do that. That responsibility as a parent trumps your responsibility as a trustee. But be clear that you're separating the two hats, the two roles as much as possible. It's important on the limitations, obviously, to operate within the law. Generally, school board members are indemnified as government elected officials from lawsuits or personal liability, but I said the word generally. When you're acting in good faith and doing what the law would say a reasonable person would do, you're not likely to be liable personally, financially, in any way for a decision of the board. But if you operate independently, you put yourself and the district at risk. Let me just give you one small example of what that could look like. Anytime it starts to feel like I'm doing an investigation by myself, I'm operating independently. Following a bus driver through the district to make sure they fully stopped at all stop signs is not the role of a school board member. Having a notepad and clocking if they speed, if they roll through a stop sign or stoplight, that is not the role of a school board member, and it might open you up to personal liability for acting outside of the scope of your authority. I've mentioned operating in the best interest of the district, making decisions, actions as a board. Again, we just can't operate independently. The system doesn't work that way. It breaks down. People have rights. One note on the open meeting law: if an individual violates the open meeting law, the individual can be fined. The district cannot pay your fine. So if you're doing, as the superintendent talked about, a walking quorum, a serial meeting, where, hey, B, what do you think about this? Hey, Melissa, what do you think about this? Roy, what do you think about this? Like that, you can be personally have to pay the fine, right? And that's just important to know. Individually as well as a group, we need to follow the law.
I want to say one last note on this, because I think we could probably go down 27 trails of all the things. The point of the open meeting laws are not to cripple you from doing your business or put you in a fearful situation that you're in the wrong or that you're going to be sued. It's that you do your business in public. It's really that simple. And before you were elected to a board, and I'm assuming and could pretty, I think, confidently say that one of the reasons that you wanted to be elected was because you wanted to be a part of the decision making. And think about that from the community side, that you wanted the conversation to take place in public so that you could hear what was going on, you could hear what board members thought, you could see what the final decision was. That's ultimately what it is. You conduct your business in public so that the public can see what's happening. And that to me is the ultimate takeaway of all the ins and outs. And we can follow up with like what should or shouldn't be on an agenda. We can put that in writing. But if the main thing that you take away from this discussion is that the expectation is you conduct the business of the board in public, that should guide 99% of anything that you do. Any other questions on this? I thought maybe we could shift and move to some things around operations, maybe just like hiring process, what that might look like with contracts and so forth. Are we good to go that way? again, having done some homework before we came here, one of the questions to me in the division that was presented, does Grangeville or however this is divided, and maybe we'll want to talk about the division, but what does that look like for contracts that are already in place? Do we have to go through an entirely new process? And maybe, Paul, we'll just kind of dump the whole contracts part over to you, and you can kind of walk us through, the need to knows.
Okay. I was just sitting here thinking, don't let this stress you out as board members, because it seems like there's a lot of pitfalls that we're explaining. It's good advice, but you're going to get used to this. It's going to become a little bit more second nature. Rely on your superintendents. Get advice when you need to, but don't stress about this, okay? It's gonna become second nature at some point. For contracts, I think, well, first of all, local control is best. And so when I'm here talking to you, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm trying to be helpful. But you're going to make the decision, right? Like, these decisions have to be made here locally. One of the things is, as a board, you need to understand is that you're an employer. I mean, plain and simple, you're running a business and you're employing people. And it's important that you have employees to do the work that you need to do. The state of Idaho, the Idaho State Constitution, is relying on you to fulfill this mandate of educating our future generations. Super important. So, the focus should be on the kids. The kids need to learn. You want these kids to develop into good humans and rational citizens, and it's a really worthy cause that you're doing. So it's important to keep your mind on the kids. That's super important. But one perspective is you have to understand is that a student's learning conditions is also an educator's working conditions. And so if the working conditions of your staff deteriorate, then also that's going to affect student learning. So as an employer, it's good to be a good steward of that responsibility and to understand that your staff are very important to carrying out, what you need as a community and what these kids need. So contracts. The law says you have to issue teacher contracts by July 1st. Okay, that's a predicament if you're going to wait until July 1st to act as a board, right? Because you got a lot of employees. And these employees, like you, want to know that they have a job. They want to know that they're going to they've invested in your community. They've laid down roots. They're part of your community. They want to know that they're going to have a job moving forward. It's very important, as it would be for any of us. It would be for me if I was in that position. Because you got to pay a mortgage, you got to pay the power bill, you got to put food on the table. These are all super important things. So as the employer, it's important for you and for the students to maintain some level of stability. Because instability, as we said, or drama, is going to be the enemy of good education. So think to yourself as a board, what can I do to create stability? If you have ideas and you want to make changes, I would say go ahead and do that. Just don't do it on July 1st. Take your time, be thoughtful and methodical about it, listen to your community, listen to your employees, and then you can make decisions later on. There's plenty of time to make decisions and to make changes. But my advice to you is, for right now, maintain stability. The best thing you could do for kids is maintain stability. What that would mean is on July 1st, I would issue contracts with your staff and move forward as if the old district was still around. Move forward as if, give them that kind of stability that they need to continue. You don't want all your staff to get anxious and start looking at other districts to work for. You want to keep your staff. All right, there's questions. I like questions.
So we can negotiate with our own staffs separately for next year's negotiated agreement.
Yes. Now let me distinguish two things. There's two contracts we're talking about. One is individual contracts. So every school district every year issues an individual contract. The superintendents know this, and that is technically what employs them. It's a one-pager. State Department puts it out, and it's a form. And there's just a couple things you can fill in there, like what they're teaching, what their salary is going to be, how many days they're going to work. But it's essentially a boilerplate form, and it's the standard form. By law, that's the only form you can use to hire a teacher with, an educator. So by law, that's what you have to use, and those have to be issued by July 1st. There is something called the collective bargaining agreement, and that fills in some of the gaps. So the collective bargaining agreement is where you and your teachers, your local association, get together and you sit down and you talk about what's needed for the district. And you fill in all the kind of gaps, like a calendar or like a bell schedule or anything really that comes up that has to do with the working conditions. And again, a collective bargaining agreement is very much in your interest as trustees, because what it is, it creates the rule book. Everybody wants to know what the rule book is. Everybody wants to know that, because that adds to stability. If it's the wild, wild west and anything could happen, people get anxious. And people don't like working in those situations. So a rule book is very helpful. They can look at this document and they say, oh, this is the rule. Okay, now I know how to behave. Everybody knows the same rules. It's like playing Monopoly. If you play Monopoly and you only have like 2 rules, it gets a little confusing pretty quickly, whether you can buy a hotel or not. But if everybody knows the rules, then everybody's operating under the same understanding. It's also a good opportunity for you to discuss with your educators what's going on in the classroom. What are the issues they're facing? It may be like, student behavior issues have spiked in one of these schools or one of these buildings, or it could be any number of things. So when we're talking about negotiations for a collective bargaining agreement, you could start that now if you want. Typically the board will have a team, and typically the teachers will have a team, and you'll sit down, and you can do that right now if you like. What the law says is that every collective bargaining agreement has a 1-year duration for the most part. That goes from July 1st to June 30th. That's what the law says. Now there's some things, if they're non-financial, they can have a 2-year duration, but most stuff has a 1-year duration. So I would encourage you as a board to seriously think about getting together as soon as you can and start talking about it, because you as a board are going to get a lot of information from your teachers about what's going on, when the rubber meets the road, what's really happening in the classrooms and what are the issues that you're facing. I'll make one last point, and I see you may have another question over there, but I have one last point is your teachers, your board, your community, I would say 98% have exactly the same goals. You're working towards exactly the same thing. And that's a good education for those kids. Everybody cares for the kids, and everybody wants the best for the kids. So if you could come at that in that direction, it's really helpful that you all kind of have the same end game. All right, other questions for contracts? Go ahead.
I guess I'm curious about whether in the past, when we negotiate as a district, we don't go backwards on a salary scale, but now we're going to have 2 new districts. So how does that carry forward with previous agreements on salaries and salary scale, where we've had a salary scale?
Yeah. Salary schedule is a good question, because some of the times districts will wait till the legislature goes home because they don't really know what the funding is going to look like. And that's something that's just a fact of life. You kind of have to wait. There's no reason why you can't start working on what we call language. So it's those things that aren't dependent on the budget. And you can start talking about those things and start having the conversation. What's best? There's a process called interest-based bargaining that you can do if you like. It's a very thorough process where you get to different kind of topics. It's very productive and it builds a relationship. So I assume the community wants the staff and the district to have a good relationship. Because when you do, the morale goes up, teaching gets better, satisfaction gets better, you don't lose staff. And so working towards good morale is a very worthy thing. Now for salary schedules, I think you do have to kind of probably have to wait till the legislature is done, so you know what funding looks like. But I'm sorry, you shook your head, go ahead.
I'm not asking about when we do a salary schedule. I'm saying because we're splitting, usually teachers and the employees have some sort of guarantee that the next year's salary schedule won't go backwards from the previous salary schedule. So my question is, now that we're 2 new districts, do we start with that same salary schedule? What are the laws around that? That's my question.
Great question. Yeah, there are different classes of contracts for educators. There's different categories. There's category 1, 2, 3, and then what we call renewable contract status. Sometimes people confuse that with tenure. It's not tenure at all. Tenure is a whole different thing. What it means is that if you have renewable contract status, what it means is you have a reasonable expectation that you're going to get a contract for the next year. Unless, of course, if you violate policy or you do something against the code of ethics or do something horrible, of course, you're not going to continue to be employed. But assuming you're doing a good job and you're teaching well, you have an expectation that you will get you'll continue to be employed. if you're doing a good job. That's what that means. So I feel like I'm missing your point maybe, but.
I think you definitely are. I know about different contract levels,
Okay.
all of that, and that's in our negotiated agreement that you stay. I'm asking about specific.
The code section. Yeah. And so, sorry, I'm loud. I should move the mic back. So this is unique, right? Because essentially you are transitioning, and so staff now are going to new districts, which as they go to a new district, if a teacher was to leave and to go to a new district, it's a different salary schedule. So I do think you're in a unique position where, yes, you are transitioning to new districts, but you're all bringing the same staff, right? And so I think you need to have those conversations. I won't necessarily provide you a recommendation, but I think it's a discussion you should have of, they were essentially in one district, and yes, now you're two, but you're bringing the same staff with you. And so what does that look like? If I was a teacher and now I went from district number 244 to district number 246, I'm living in the same community, I'm providing the same service, I'm in the same building. Should I have an expectation as a teacher that the salary would be the same? I think you would hear that that would be the general expectation for all of us, right? And so I think that's a conversation you'll need to have and how you apply that specific code section.
Wendy? So as superintendent, one thing I would encourage you, I would not try to do a major rehaul this year. You have enough on your plate. I think that is huge. And negotiations and master agreements are tough enough every year. So one thing I would encourage you as an acting superintendent, as I would look at the master agreement that you currently have, see what things you can live with, try to keep the status quo as much as you can. The things that cause you heartburn, you may not be able to deal with this year, but you can put it on the radar for next year when you have your board established and things like that and say, you know what, I can't do this year, but next year this is going to be a priority for us at negotiations. The other thing, when you're looking at contracts, and I know we're talking about the division of one district into two, and I'm not sure all the legalities, so forgive me if I'm wrong here. But the one thing you could look at is say, we're going to create a new salary schedule for our district, something that we know long-term is good for us. But for those people who are veteran teachers coming in and have the longevity in our district, we're going to keep them exactly where they were and continue to work on that salary schedule. And as new employees come in, this is the salary schedule we're going to use for those people coming in new to our district. Because you are going to have new hires this year, I'm sure. So there's nothing the matter with that or grandfathering those people that have been working for Grangeville schools so they do not take a hit, and continue to keep them where they are and keep them whole. So I would highly encourage you to do that if at all possible financial. I have some heartburn when I hear wait till the legislative session is done, because it drives me absolutely crazy with the timeline that we are expected to have a budget for our districts, and I'm sitting there tapping my fingers waiting for the legislation to get done, especially when we're talking finances. So when I look at doing a budget, I look at what is my fund balance, what is my teacher load, what is the years, and usually you're building a budget in the dark. I'm just going to be honest with you. You have some ideas of what the legislature is going to do, so I would encourage you to get started on that. I wouldn't put it off to the last minute, because then you are scrambling in April and May to get that done. But be thinking of the big picture. What do you want that to look like for your district? Are you looking at a brand new schedule? Are you going to keep the same schedule that was in place and just work from that? Those are some conversations I would be having now.
Okay, now that I understand your question, I'm talking like all over the universe. Also, with the speakers kind of facing that way, sometimes I'm having a hard time tracking. But there is a code provision, and it's complicated if you want to cut salaries. So if you're a teacher coming back for the next year, you need to maintain those salaries as they were the year before. At a minimum, you don't go backwards. If you do, as a board, decide to go backwards, there's some complicated code section that says you either have to do it through a formal reduction in force, or you have to do it across the board for every single person that works for the district. So there are some things, but it does take some complication. In general, you need to maintain those. And as a practical matter, if you say, hey, come back, you're going to work for us again. Oh, by the way, you're getting a salary cut. You're likely to see staff go somewhere else.
Jonathan, did you have something on there? Okay. Let me say that we know we're not going to get every single answer today, and also you will come up with questions later, especially when you get right into it. I hope it goes without saying that any of us and more are available to help. Ultimately, that's what we want. So if you're coming up with a plan, hey, does this, we're not going to say whether we like your plan or not, but we'll say, yep, you can do that, or that, follows what the guidelines are. We're happy to do that. Other questions on contracts specifically?
I just have one to clarify. So the state recognizes both boards. So if we want to put contracts out at the end of May, once we know the levy, once we know the legislation, we are capable to do that, correct? Okay.
Yes. We're going to get into community questions right at the end, sir, if that's all right with you. All right, thank you. All right, looking up here at board. All right, we're feeling okay on timelines-ish. I know we are waiting for legislative decisions, but like Wendy says, I think you can come up with something that is at least a foundation of here's where we're, where we can go. We can help at the Department of Education on helping you see what your allocations or your distributions will look like as separate districts so that you're not budgeting to a blind target. So you know what you have now as a combined district based on what your enrollment and attendance look like right now. We can give you an idea of here's what your bucket of money is going to be and here's what yours is going to be, and that will help. I'm assuming that will help give you an idea of what you've got to work with. So we can help with that at any time. Amanda?
I'm curious what we should do about district level employees and whether they need to reapply for positions in their in the new respective districts, or whether I'm just curious about that. What you recommend or what your thoughts are?
If employees need to reapply in their districts, district classified, Jonathan, and then Paul, or
You want to take classified?
you can arm wrestle.
Are you referring to classified staff?
I am. I'm
Okay.
referring to maybe office staff, the district office, or just office, like people that work across the entire district, and then we might need to do some rethinking. How do we handle that?
Yeah, so as you both know, classified staff are at will. So I'm going to echo a little bit of what Paul said. Like, they do not have contracts, but at the same time, you often will know the people in your building and the people that are doing good work for kids, right? And so you have an expectation. You've already been running these schools. You know a little bit of the staffing load that's needed to be in the building to serve kids every day. And so I would evaluate that as part of your budget process. So you can start getting information, I would say, after February 15th. That's a day when your payment information comes out for the combined entity. And I would start working on a budget that would then look through the staffing needs for each of your building, and I would start having those conversations of what they look like separate, so that you can then identify what your staffing needs are, and then you could walk through whether that looks like and whether you're choosing to say, I want you to reapply, or we're just going to continue with that current staffing that's in place.
But there's no legal requirement that you have to.
You don't have to make them reapply.
It's up to your board how you want to handle that. Paul, did you have?
I think it's been answered, but it seems like a nightmare to repost every single one of your positions. I wouldn't do that. It's not legally required, and I wouldn't do it. So,
I guess my question is, which district do they belong to? So, like, say we have a district office staff, and now each district needs a district office staff. Then do they get to choose, or should we just? I mean, I'm just asking for the best way to handle. What your thoughts are on that? I'm not saying there's one way. I'm just asking for feedback on thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, that's tricky. I hear what you're saying, because now you need 2 front office staff that, where you got by with 1 before. So that's, that's tricky. I think you need to have some conversations. You and Vinny are going to have some conversations.
The one thing I might recommend to that is you don't want it to be demeaning to your current staff that they have to reapply and submit an application and reference letters and do all that again. You want to try to make the process as easy as possible. The one thing that I might recommend is that you ask staff, if you are interested and retaining your position or applying for a position, send a letter of interest along with the location of where you would like to be, which district. And I think I would look at that and just base it on that to start. I would not make him go through the full-blown interview process, reference process, everything again.
What if there's somebody in the community that wants to apply for that position? Do you think, as far as our constituents, do you think that they would feel like we're slighting them by not opening these positions up to the public?
I think that is going to have to be your call as a board. If you have an outstanding person that's currently in that position, I don't think there's any reason that you need to open that up to the community and continue, that you should be able to continue that person without. If you are looking for, if you don't have much interest or you would just like to see a better candidate pool, I think I would explain that to the current employee, but I think you have to, just to have goodwill and good relationship with that employee, I think you better show a good reason why you're opening that up to the community. If it was me and I had to reapply for a position, you're like, oh, well, we're gonna open up to the community and see what's out there, that would really put me off as to, do I really wanna stay and work for you if you're looking for someone else?
And I guess just to dovetail a little bit with that conversation, you have a unique opportunity to discuss what it looks like. Obviously not a front desk person, because sharing them might be difficult, but some operational staff you might be able to effectively share in a way that might help, sorry, I'm a finance person, budget on both sides, right? And allow you to do different things for kids. And so as you guys meet and talk through those, I wouldn't shy away from at least having that discussion and that opportunity, because you could gain a lot of effectiveness that way, and be able to then utilize your dollars differently.
Yeah, thank you for that. Amanda and I have visited about this a little bit, and I think where the question came into play is page 34 of our deconsolidation plan, and that's where it gets into talking about division, other considerations of at-will employees, and in particular district level. And so as written, it kind of presents an interesting way of the division factor. 28.5% of the employees, 71.5. So we were wondering, I guess the nature of the question that she presented and then a follow-up, are we tied to that? Because that's basically for one of every 4 district level employees, 1 may be offered a position in Kuski and 3 may be offered in Grangeville. And we want to work together to divide as best as possible. And so that was in following the legal plan as adopted, that presented a little bit of a interesting point. And so,
Allison, yeah, so as she's reading, I'm going to ask her a question.
Will do. So I guess part of my question is that an area of the 3 communities adopted this, the state board adopted it, and so as written, not wanting to pick and choose at which area we follow, is this an area where superintendents, boards can agree on not necessarily 28.5 personnel, but like if we want to use a position 50-50, I mean, that's not how it's written. It's written by the employee.
You asked a question that I was going to ask. What, if any, wiggle room is there? Because I can understand that a division plan was put together before you actually got into the nuts and bolts, and I can see how what was put on paper months ago in practice doesn't help anybody. Is that something that the Board of Education could come back in, or could their individual boards, or both? What do you think?
This one's really tricky, just to be honest. And I have a list, if that tells you anything over here, of the things I want to change in this statute, because the statute itself is, we all sort of go, it's not great. It has a really well-described process up to the point at which the vote happens. And then it has almost nothing about how the actual division happens and what that looks like. And it doesn't specify, right? There's nothing in law that says they must follow, like the district shall follow the division plan to the letter once approved by the State Board of Education. However, it does say the division plan has to be approved by the State Board of Education. So there's sort of this tricky, like, well, we approved it, so we're supposed to follow it, but all the things that are in here are not required by the law. There is, it feels like, some wiggle room. There's also nothing in the law around revising your division plan and what the process would or would not be for that, right? That doesn't exist in the law. But based on other practices, there are many, many, many plans that we have folks revise and then the board approves the revision. So there's, I think, some, at the very least, I think we probably could do that, right? I don't think it's specified in law, but I think we're capable of saying like, hey, this doesn't really work. So if you want to rewrite that and bring it back and have us approve it, we could do that. What I will have to follow up with our Deputy Attorney General on and get back to you about is whether or not that's actually necessary, right? Could we just sort of say, hey, we get it, go ahead? And so that's the piece that I'll have to look into.
Well, and I would just add, I mean, I think just to put a finer point on what Allison's saying is there is flexibility. The conversation about the division of these employees, now that you know more, needs to be discussed amongst the joint operating board. And a determination needs to be made about what that looks like that makes sense for these soon-to-be subdivided school districts.
And the wording, the verb is proposed, and then it says maybe, maybe. So it's not required and must. So I think that right there opens that up to revision.
Right, there's some shalls and wills and some mays. And those are important differentiations legally, right? A may is open to flexibility, you can change it. A shall or a will is saying we shall do this, we will do this, right, from a legal perspective. And that's where if you're wanting to change one of those things that's a shall or a will, we'll have to figure out what it looks like to make sure that you're doing that. But I agree with Greg, I think we can figure that out. I don't think we're beyond sort of the place where we would say, you must follow this to the absolute letter or we're going to come get you.
Well, it's not possible unless you're going to cut somebody in half and you're magicians. So I don't know, so I what I'm hearing is talk and figure that out. That's what I'm getting out of this.
Perfect, thank you. We've had discussion. We just didn't want that to be an issue.
Well, and I'd say for talking, we also need to work together, and we need to work in the best interest of the children at both districts. Keep that in mind.
Are there any questions as far as anything around asset distribution? There's probably 1,000 of them that we can't answer. And again, we're here to give tools of how to do it, not say how you need to have it look. Amanda?
I just have one specific one that Vinny and I have been reading through this, and we're kind of treating it like...
Will you talk right in? Thank you.
I'm sorry. Vinny and I have been reading through this together, and I think we're kind of treating it like a negotiated agreement where we're going to read through each paragraph and come to some sort of understanding about what that means to each of us, and then sign off when we've come to something so that we have a record of what we've been thinking and doing together. That's kind of our plan. However, there's a few paragraphs in here where we're splitting assets, and it says that in all cases, this is my understanding, that Grangeville will purchase those items from CV. It does not say that CV has the option to purchase those items from Grangeville on the shared assets. I don't know what page it's on exactly, but that makes me a little nervous. It does say we can distribute those assets to the best of our ability to get to a fair 7228, but at the end of the day, it appears to me that Grangeville will be paying CV for the items out of the district office and for any equipment, shared vehicles that we need to distribute, because you can't cut a pickup in half. So I'm just wondering if you feel like the other issue, we might be able to work around that. Maybe one of our districts, maybe CV wants something and we don't. Do we have to buy it because there's only one of it, or do we have a little leeway?
It looks like it starts on page 28, just
That's
if you've
correct.
got the plan. I would say yes to that use your common sense of coming together. And I think for the division of assets, this is a really great example of individual boards meeting together to talk about what are your priorities, what do you think that you will need or that you don't have to continue programs or to build upon something. And then your boards can get together or your superintendents get together and kind of go down that list of, hey, we need these mats from this program for PE. Okay, fine. Well, we need that. This is not equal, but like we need that shop piece of equipment, or something like that, so that you would be able to continue the programs that you have for your students. And I think starting from that place, and you've heard that theme a lot, how do we keep the classrooms and the programs for the kids going? And then what do you have to share and divide in order to make that happen? Okay, anything else from up here on that? Okay. You guys like to do things the real fun way, getting together now. What a great opportunity to really focus on prioritizing for your kids. It's a great opportunity to satisfy that, and I think when you work backwards from that, that you're gonna have some great results. Okay, let me look down here. Do we want to take a quick break? We do have a break, take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back. We just have, at least on my list, a few other items, and then we were, if the board chairs are still agreeable, open it up to any questions from the community. I know we've talked quite a bit, or maybe there's more questions around contracts. Anything related to just initial operating budgets, questions, concerns? I know there's 1,000, but anything that we might be able to help with? Not that one.
Yelling really loud. I think a major thing that a lot of people have a question about is structure of the administrative staff. So if there's anything that you see in districts similar size, the way they structure that, whether a superintendent is the same thing as a principal and all that kind of stuff.
So, sorry. I have served as a dual role for many years, both Michigan and in Idaho, as elementary principal superintendent. I originally started as an elementary teacher. The opportunity came available to be the superintendent in the district. We were under financial concerns, we couldn't afford to hire another person. So I was, I guess, gifted the responsibility of being a superintendent elementary principal. I have done that for 19 years. And just the last few years, I became just a superintendent. I also worked for the State Department part-time. It can be done, and I would say focus on your employees' strengths. So if they have the experience, like my experience was in the elementary school, that was my area of expertise, it would have been a struggle for me probably to come in and do the middle school, high school at that time. So really look at what your employee certification is, what their areas of strength, what their experience is. Have they been a teacher for many years at the middle school level, high school level? And I would base those decisions on that. I'm not exactly sure what your numbers are going to be next year, but a lot of districts in Region 2 do dual roles in our area. So that would be something, and I can also help you connect with those districts if you're thinking about doing a split. I know we have one district right now in Region 2 that just opened up for a superintendent principal, and that will be their only administrator due to their student numbers. So we have quite a variety depending on the student numbers and the configuration of your school. And it's not solely student numbers, but you also have to look at the configuration of your buildings as well, and how you're going to have a superintendent be in the superintendent's office. Is it in the same building that they're going to be the principal? Are they going to have to transfer between buildings? I went in idealistic by first year thinking, oh, I'm going to go to the superintendent's in the office in the afternoon. I'm going to go to the elementary principal's office in the morning. It will be wonderful. By January, I'm like, to heck with that. You know, one office, that's where I'm gonna be. So I think you really have to look at those dynamics as well.
I can tell you around the state in our small rural areas, which are most of our areas outside of just the Boise area, that you do have a superintendent that has one or more additional roles. They might be the transportation director. They might be the maintenance supervisor, in addition to being the superintendent. And I think Wendy's advice is good. Look at the strengths of the individuals that you've hired and pair them to those assignments. And there may be additional stipends, so you could have, here's your superintendent's salary, but if they're taking on additional roles, that there's an additional, $1,500, or I'm making that number up, that's added for that assignment that they have on top of what they were hired to do.
I would just keep in mind the human element and toll as you think about that. It will be important for board members to learn and understand the complexity of that super principal role. Realize there's a human being here, and are they truly working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week? Because that's not sustainable. So back to the word Paul used of stability, like how do you keep that administrator over time and help them avoid burnout? So.
In some places, they also have a head teacher that's assigned at a building, and so maybe it's the superintendent is the principal of the elementary or the high school, but there is a head teacher assigned in those buildings that really manages kind of the day-to-day operations or decisions that need to be made to take pressure off of the superintendent. I've also seen configurations where the business manager is also the board clerk, or you have someone at your central office that also has some additional duties. So looking at strengths, what's not going to burn somebody out is a really good place to start.
And maybe just knowing like the usual district office staff. There's different roles. You've got the curriculum head teacher, maybe you've got the technology person, you've got the bus supervisor, the superintendent, the board clerk, the financial person, the maintenance person, the federal programs person, the special education director, the HR person, and then transportation. So those are all the usual different roles that need to be filled or shared. So that would be something.
I will tell you it is very common for, as a building principal or superintendent, that we wear multiple hats. I mean, I have my CDL, I can drive bus. I got that after COVID because we had the shortage with bus drivers. I am the special director, I am the title person. You take on many different roles, so that's why I'm saying really look at the person's area of expertise. I don't have a curriculum director. We are too small to have a curriculum director. That responsibility goes to my building principals. My Title I teacher, it takes care of all programs and grants. So we do a lot of shared responsibility, and honestly, if you're an administrator in a rural district, you know you're going to wear multiple hats.
Okay, I'm going to keep going down the list. We've talked a little bit about contracts and payroll beginning July 1. Are there additional thoughts or maybe just strings that we kind of left untied related to payroll? And I'm sure in the coming months there will be more. So just again, a standing invitation here.
Now that you say that, I wondered how people commonly share employees well. Like, does one district primarily take that employee on and contract them out to the other district at an hourly rate? And is that how districts share well?
So I'm going to try to answer I'm too loud. I'm going to try to answer that question, and really, my answer is going to come to it depends. And so really, part of your sitting down is deciding how it is you want to share. Like you brought up a technology director, which you're both probably going to want to have one of those, and that might be a position where you say, hey, we have expertise with person X, and so we're going to share that role. And so now you have a couple of options. You could each hire them at 0.5 and know that you'll be evaluating that employee. You have some ownership over that 0.5. You two would sit down together and decide how that one FTE is going to be switched. You could hire that person full-time, and there could be an MOU with a contract between the two districts. All of them are available options. What I would just say is maybe sit down and discuss a plan, and then just design some consistency around that so that it's applied equally, so that you don't maybe have this one we're going to share, this one we're going to contract, because all that does is just create more avenues and opportunities for more work, right?
So, I'm sorry, that might be something that you leave more to the superintendent when you're talking about filling staff. A lot of times superintendents at the Region 2 will say, you know what, I'm looking for this person, and we talk about that at our regional meeting, and then we find out, or we'll put out an email and say, does anyone have the school site that we can share some hours with, things like that. So that will usually go through the superintendent's desk to see if we can try to negotiate a contract or do an MOU. I love the idea, and I've tried that this year to get where Genesee was going to be the financial agent, to hire a speech pathologist is what we were looking at this year, because we had an online program. And we knew we needed it 2 days a week. I didn't need 3 days. Could I fill the other 3 days? You know, to get the person insurance, things like that, might be able to get a face-to-face. So you have to think of all those dynamics if you're able to do that. When you talk about added costs, it's not just the salary. You have to think about retirement benefits, things like that as well. And a lot of times your superintendent will be the one that has the connections in the network with the other area schools local to see if they can make those services work.
I'm just going to share an unusual one because I've never seen this, but a year ago, there was a superintendent in a small district that was the IT director for another small district. So that was all the ways that you can think of making it happen, you can think of. And so long as there is that consistency of what the contracts look like and everyone clearly understands who's sharing what and how, be as creative as you possibly can. And in many cases, you may find candidates that are willing to take on some of these because you've been creative about how to do it. Another item that I had on my list, again, based on conversations that I've had with all of you, are there resources or discussion points that we can have here on how you move forward communicating in your communities with your patrons? Are there questions that you have around that? Just building the support around this. I think I'll just say this on behalf of the boards, and I love that the community is here and engaged. They are doing something that is challenging, again, that no one else in the state is doing. Be kind as they do this, and be supportive and look for ways to help. Question first before you criticize. You can see up here that there were questions presented to us that we don't know. We didn't know the answer immediately, or that's we think, or we'll get back to you. You've got incredible community members that are willing to step up as a volunteer, unpaid, to do this. They're hard jobs. They care about their kids and your kids, and so I'll just make that as a plug. So go easy on them while they're figuring it out. For board members, are there questions that you have for us, or just maybe experiences that we might share on effective ways to communicate along the way so that you build the confidence and the trust that is so needed to have this be successful? Oh, excuse me, Roy.
So I know that the other district, the Clearwater district, has done a survey of patrons, right? I don't know how that's gone. I don't know what the results are. I haven't heard anything about that. But it seems to me, if you read the material we've been given, one of the places where our authority comes from is from the voters. And it would seem like, I think in what I've observed, over the years, I've been in this district now with my family and grandchildren for 32 years, is that other boards have kind of had an opinion about what they wanted, and then the general public at large was really not consulted. What do you want? What do you think the schools ought to be like? What do you think we ought to have here? How much money should we spend? I think those questions and that perspective is really, really important. If you want to get levies passed, we have to know what the public thinks, because they're the ones who are going to vote on it. And so, have you seen surveys that work or surveys that don't work? Or have you seen a different way of gathering? I mean, we can only talk to so many people. We only know so many people. And there's a lot of people that are going to vote that we have no contact with. Thank you.
I'll let others chime in here as well. I'll tell you my experience as a school board member. Don't ask the public if you're not going to listen to what they have to say. Don't survey them. So if you already know what you want to do, have a conversation about why you've come to that decision. It's not to say that you can't make decisions, because that's what you are elected to do. Explain why and how we're going to move forward. But if you do choose to solicit input and feedback, have a mechanism to address that. Now, also a survey doesn't mean that it ties a board's hand. Ask questions in a way that get their input. Before we make some of these decisions, we're interested in what you have to say. Then you can use that survey as part of your board discussion before the decision making. Well, we heard this and it was supported in the survey, or all the ins and outs of that. But I think that is an important way to interact, but use it carefully, because you don't want to give the impression that, one, if we surveyed you, we're going to do 100% of what you said. That's not what a survey is for. And don't do the survey after you've made the decision. That would be my help there.
One just addition to the survey piece. Probably the most important thing for your survey to be effective is for your questions not to be leading. So if your question is written in a way in which you've already determined the type of response you're hoping to get, you won't get actual feedback that's useful. So when you're developing a survey, if you're going to do that, pull in somebody who has no background on the questions that you're asking, and ask them, does this question make sense? Does the question lead you to a specific type of answer? Is there a better way we could word this question? Because how you word the questions is absolutely the thing that determines whether or not the feedback you get back is useful.
So we did a survey a few years ago, but we didn't control who was answering that survey. Is there a way to anonymously control that, or do we just have to ask for the emails? Or
Well, I think you could do surveys to different groups so that you know where that information is coming from. We surveyed the business community, and here is what our business community told us. They said we should prioritize career technical education, that we should prioritize this, that, or the other, and that investments in education help the economic growth of our town. We surveyed our teachers. Our teachers told us that these elements of the classroom were most important to them. That's how it got prioritized. When we surveyed parents, you can distinguish how you do that, and I think that that's also valuable information, so that when you are going into the community to talk about a survey, it's not just a wide swath. Well, was it people who had kids in school? Now, we care what they think, but I'm telling you, a parent that has a third grader will have a different perspective about a classroom situation than someone who's retired. And so we care about kids, but it looks a little bit different. So you can distinguish that and put that out, the same survey, but to different groups of people.
And then just one to the general public as well?
Yeah.
And do you have somebody at the State Department of Ed that could help us create that survey? Because I don't understand the psychology of surveying.
Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
sure we have someone, Greg, right? It's probably Greg.
So that was my question. So are there,
Greg and Allison.
are there surveys that you found that are more effective?
Yes,
and that,
yes,
and
there
that
are
don't lead
things.
questions?
Yeah.
Great.
We
I'd
can-
love to see one
We
of
can
those.
give you options and then you can decide what you like. Wendy?
I was also going to add, don't be afraid to reach out to your regional schools as well, because a lot of us send out surveys and we just share those resources to our neighboring districts. The other thing is when we did our strategic plan, we had a bunch of community members come in and give us feedback. Do not be surprised by the data that you are going to be surprised. I mean, I walked in thinking I knew what the community was going to say was the priorities for our district and and I really thought we were going down the athletic avenue and esports, and I would have laid money on that I knew what we were going to end up having to work on. And I was completely wrong. We end up going down the whole avenue. We need daycare. We don't have any daycare. We can't hire employees for our businesses because there's no daycare in town. It totally took a different turn than what I ever would have expected by the feedback from our community. So even though you may have something in mind, your community may see this is what we need, and it may be completely different than what you anticipated, and you need to be prepared for that to make that a priority if your community sees that as a need for your district.
Can I ask a follow-on? So in your situation, when you did the survey and you found out that the public or the whatever, your constituency, is maybe have different priorities, when you changed, did that really bring things together?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, we knew then that was our focus, that daycare was an issue not only for teachers in the school district, and we had just saw a big turnover, but I had a lot of veteran teachers leave, and I was hiring a lot of new teachers coming in that were just starting families, so we knew that was going to be an issue. I had our 3 main businesses represented there, and they're like, we have people apply for jobs to come here to work, but there's no daycare for them to put their kids if they're not school age. And so we literally walked out of that meeting thinking, okay, that is our mission, that is our path, that is what we are going to do, and where do we begin? And a year later, we opened an early learning center. So, I mean, that was just something that spoke volumes to me, that of the importance of those meetings and to hear from the community as to what they saw the needs were, and to give me that outside perspective outside the walls of my school.
This is where I plug the beauty of the system of locally elected board members. It will look different place to place, and that's okay. And it should look different, and I love that.
Yeah, a couple of other thoughts. First of all, surveys done well are a very complex science. I used to teach statistics, and it can be complicated to get a process where you get true community representation. And I think B might have been leaning that way a little bit. I could sit here on my phone and fill out your survey 100 times, right? And then we could think the community said something. So you're going to want other mechanisms. I'm a huge fan of this kind of community conversation opportunity, but structured differently, like a listening session where there's small group tables, there's topics, and board members are there to listen. Not to tell, but to listen and hear what is the community saying to us, and really get kind of a more personalized human pulse beat on the rationale for why the community is asking for something. You can do that as part of a strategic planning process, among all the other things you need to be doing. But I would encourage you to get community input, and face-to-face whenever possible. Some really important things on communicating with your public. Board members individually don't have authority, so be very careful not to promise anyone anything. Don't say, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, unless the board has voted on it, it passed, and you've got agreement, because that's one opportunity. It's common practice, nearly every school board in the state and any type of board designates a spokesperson. Typically it would be your board chair, but have that conversation to make sure that it's the board chair that speaks on behalf of the board. And don't miss, it's your superintendent who speaks on behalf of the district. The board president can speak on behalf of the board, but you need your professional, trained, paid, experienced administrator to be the spokesperson on the district behalf, where board members individually have this great privilege of representing the community to the schools and bringing our understanding. This is what I believe the community is saying. This is what I'm hearing. We also have the privilege of representing the schools back to the community. Well, actually, this is what's happening at our elementary school or at our high school or in that program. Like, we get to be that ambassador, and it's a wonderful thing. If you haven't been doing this long, you will find that you enjoy that, having the accurate inside information. Again, being careful that you don't have multiple people speaking on behalf of the board or speaking on behalf of the district. You're speaking as a representative, as an ambassador from the community to the schools, from the schools back to the community. You also want to keep in mind as you go through your work as a school board member how important this is. What Roy was really getting at, if he doesn't mind, he'll tell me. It's so critical that as a board, we represent the vision and the values of the community. The board doesn't own the schools. The teachers don't own the schools. The parents don't own the schools. The students don't own the schools. Businesses don't own the schools. The community, the whole community, owns the schools. And you all get to serve as the elected representatives from the community to act in the best interest of the community. You've been entrusted with the community's two most precious resources: their kids and their money. And as a steward, you want to steward both well. So as you just think about that, how can I make a decision that is in the best interest of the community, meeting the needs of our kids in the best ways we can, and as economically or as conservatively, financially as possible? We're not wasting money, but we're also realizing money comes to the schools to be spent on behalf of the education of children. Not to build bank accounts, not to limit or restrict what is done, but to act in the best interest of the children that we serve. That was a lot of different things. I've got 6 years experience as a board member and in board development, and these are things that we learn over time. It's so critical. We're not there to represent our own values. We're there to represent the community's values. That can be hard to kind of get our head around. And we're not there just to represent our vision for the kids, but the community's vision for their children.
And another thing I've heard you say a lot, Phil, is before you say something to a constituent as a board member, it is so important that you truly understand what you're saying. So if you say something like, we don't need a levy, be sure that you've really looked at those numbers, because that's what I love when you say that. What you're saying means so much. It has so much influence on the people that you're talking to. And so really know those numbers before you say something like that.
Well, I think the principle there very powerfully is your words matter more now than before you were elected. When you speak, there's a weight to your words. I think of when I was a new school board member and I was volunteering at an 8th grade dance, and the PTA president came up to me and I said, is there anything more that we can do? Our custodian was standing right beside me. And she said, no, I think we've got it handled. I looked at the custodian, my friend. That's the way it works, right? In small communities, the custodian's my friend. I looked at him and I said, Salim, it looks like we can go home. He looked at me very seriously and he said, is that a directive? I knew I wasn't Salim's boss, but he didn't know that. That was a really important learning awareness for me, that I may think of myself a certain way, but other people look at me now as I'm in charge. I have authority because of the title. And I think all elected leaders go through that realization that their words matter more now than before. And people look at you, and you can even say to that teacher, I'm not here as a board member, but she's seeing board member flashing from your forehead. Our words really matter, and so it's not just about us. It can't be just about us as an individual. It has to be about the good of the school system and the good of the community.
If I could offer something that I think is overlooked for the community involvement, discussion, awareness piece, how you structure your agenda, the items that you put on your agenda are what you're going to talk about. Don't just make it transactional. We approved the budget, go pay the bills, we approved the minutes from last time, okay, we need to buy a new bus, we need to, you know what I'm talking about. Just very transactional. Include items on there that encourage discussion. You want the board to discuss items. So what's on your agenda is what you're going to focus on. And that's what you're telling the community is important for your time. You're doing your business in public, the discussion as a board in public. What can you put on every time? Have something about there on student achievement. Have a discussion. Have your superintendent present. What does third grade reading look like? They present the information, and then as a board, it's an opportunity for you to say, well, are teachers getting the right professional development? What kind of books do we have in there? If the goal is to increase reading achievement and outcomes or learning for kids, which it is, put some items on there that allow you as a board to then give direction to your superintendent. And that happens in the public setting. And that, to me, that's one of the most fantastic and underutilized aspects of the public meeting. What are some of those things that you want to talk about? Repairs, facilities, those are important operations. Don't look past the outcomes for kids.
I just want to add, when you do that, and I'll speak for myself as a superintendent, I don't mind when I have a board member say, hey, can you get me or can you bring this forward? The thing that does drive me crazy is when you do that meeting. And I will often say, can I bring that to you next month's board meeting? So if you were to ask me right now, I'd say, can I put that on the March agenda? Just make sure that you're giving enough lead time so that we can do our due diligence to make sure we're getting you the actual information that you want, or that we can come back and at least give you a draft and say, is this what you were asking us for? That way we are not wasting your time at a board meeting or the constituents that are sitting there in the community wanting that information as well. So the other thing too is I do ask my other fellow administrators to do a report, and ours are based on the strategic plan. We took the time to develop that plan. There's 5 components of it. I carry that over on my superintendent's report every month. Doesn't mean I will have to report on all 5 every month, but that is my guide to make sure this was a priority for our community and for our board to set that as a strategic plan goal. This is what I need to be reporting on. So that's sort of my guide. It doesn't mean I can't talk about other things, but I know those are the priorities for me to talk about at a board meeting.
I'm just going to jump in and add to that. Unless state law changes, which it very well may, each of your districts has a continuous improvement plan due on October 1st. And that continuous improvement plan requires public input. So right now is your opportunity to start thinking about that plan and how it becomes the building blocks for your longer-term strategic plan. The districts that are using the continuous improvement plans well are using them as an integrated part of a longer-term strategic plan. It's essentially annual targets that you then connect to, okay, in 5 years we want to do X, then every year when we're working on our continuous improvement plan, we're saying, where are we relative to our longer-term strategic plan, and what are our targets for next year? So if that law changes, there will be information that goes out to districts, but for now, I would strongly suggest you start looking at those requirements and start figuring out what that process is going to look like, because it can help to guide exactly what Wendy's talking about, and then looking through and saying, okay, if these are our metrics and our goals, how do we break those down into different meetings throughout the year?
And we're happy to help give templates of what agendas can look like. There's an option on an agenda where some of those transactional things you can do in one motion. It's not going to be controversial. It's approve the minutes or approve a date for something, things that just don't take discussion. You can put all of those into one motion so that you can reserve the bulk of the meeting for the conversation. And so we're all happy to help, particularly at the department and the board, if you're interested in what that could look like.
Wanted to say one thing about running school board meetings. And Superintendent Critchfield reminded me of this a few minutes ago. School board meetings are not a public meeting. They're a meeting of the board that is held in public. This is very important. And it happens all over the state, where somebody in the audience will raise their hand and want to make a comment. I realize these are small communities, these are our friends. We want to have a friendly board meeting. And the board, usually it's the board chair, but the board has to decide how you find the balance between professional and efficient and friendly. How you refer to each other, is it Trustee Teets or is it Aaron, right? That becomes a part of the culture and climate. Don't let your board meetings devolve into people from the public making a motion. Trust me, I've seen this. Somebody in the public raises their hands and says, Mr. Chair, I want to make a motion. And the chair say, what is your motion? Right? It doesn't work that way. You can't run an efficient, effective meeting. Only the board members can make motions. Only the board members have open opportunity to discuss the items when they're being considered for business. And only the board members get to vote. That's really important, right? You have to figure out, how do we conduct this meeting in public so the public can hear, they can understand, they can follow, and at the same time recognize it's a board business meeting on behalf of the district.
Phil, that is a beautiful segue. And, let's get...
Can I just ask, how have you all, since you guys have a lot more experience than certainly I do, how have you found the best way to get public input at a board meeting? I know that's a tough question, right?
I think there's a couple of, it ultimately is your decision how to do it. If you want to set aside time at a board meeting, if you decide at every board meeting we have an item on our agenda, I would control it in a way that you limit the time, make it consistent for everybody. Maybe you say, everyone gets 2 to 3 minutes. I can tell you at the Board of Education meetings, you have to let our board know within 48 hours that you want to come, and that gets listed, so it's not just an open mic situation. So I think having it is important, but controlling how you allow it, limiting time, having people tell you in advance, and then also that the expectation from the person giving the comment, the board is not now going to take that up as a discussion. You're going to listen. Thank you for coming and sharing that with us, and thank you for being a part of the community. And then if it's something later that you decide as a board you want to talk about, but in that moment, I would not have a back and forth or, hey, now it's going to open up a discussion. And we can help with different ways of doing that too.
So a couple other things I could joke and say, talk about cutting athletics, it'll fill your boardroom. But one of the other things too is not everyone is comfortable coming to a board meeting. So sometimes as administrators, what we will do to get people to come and get information to our board members is we will specifically invite teachers to come in. So like if PA has gone to nationals, a good turnout and things like that, we'll invite our BPA leader to come with the kids and do the recognition of the students in front of the board. That way you get additional information. Parents are coming to the board meeting, they're getting to see the agenda, things like that. Invite your kindergartners to come in and start your board meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. Every one of them is going to bring a parent or two to the board meeting, and they're all going to get handed an agenda. So there's a lot of positive things that you can do just to get their awareness developed and just provide you additional information as well. And it doesn't have to necessarily that you're bringing them in for specific comment period or to get input, things like that, but just get them used to coming in and finding that it's a comfortable and safe place for them to be.
And I have a lot of people who reach out just on my phone. All of our phone numbers and emails are on our website. We get a lot of emails as well. I don't know if you guys do. I do hear from a lot of people through my phone and through email. But if you want to invite us to different organizations or groups that you guys have, like if the PTO wants to come or wants one of us to come or wants to have a discussion, or we can do that as well. So remember to reach out to us as well.
Thank you, that is good. Because we're not in a formal meeting session, and this is workshopping and learning together and listening, we did want to, if it's all right with our chairs, open it up. If there are questions either to us or to your board members, recognizing that we're all doing this in real time and you may not get an answer on the spot, but we're here to listen. And I think we'll start over here with this gentleman. Please.
Just over here.
Michael's our VIP of this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, it's working. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate you folks coming and being so transparent with us about how this is working, how this is supposed to work, and having a good discussion. I think we're all trying to do the best we can, and I applaud you for that. The thing I'd like to ask about is, I believe this gentleman's name is Paul, was talking about employment contracts and how that happens in basically two flavors. One is individual contracts with individual staff members, and the other is kind of a collective bargaining that he described as setting ground rules. And so the question that I have is, are there other ways to create ground rules? I've worked for more than 43 years in the corporate environment. I was one of the few employees that was an integral part of a company, they call it a company split, when HP split and became HP Inc. and HPE. And so there was, similar to a deconsolidation, a lot of moving parts and a lot of stuff that had to be done right to maintain compliance. So the question I have is, my experience, which is quite limited in the collective bargaining realm, is that tends to be adversarial, where it's like, this is what I want and this is what I'm willing to give. And the thing that I've found very successful in the corporate environment is more coming alongside and how can we all work together at different role levels, management, worker levels. How can we work together to create the win-win environment where it's better for us as a team, the management team, the worker team, in providing the best possible product for our customer, which in this case would be the children and their education. So I'd just like to suggest that there may be other ways to skin this cat, and I like cats. Anyway, other ways to approach this, this challenge of how do we create the best possible work environment to get the job done, something that works well for everybody, and creates a good learning environment for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. More comments, questions? Paul, you can if you'd like, sure.
I wasn't sure if to comment on that. Great points. I do think there are plenty of ways to communicate, and if I don't see it from my experience that collective bargaining always has to be adversarial. In fact, there's so many places where it's not. It's the place where people can come together and really openly share ideas and how to progress. It really boils down to culture. And what kind of culture are you as trustees going to have in your district with your community and with your staff? And if the culture is very dictatorial and top down and you better click your heels and get in line, that's not a good place to work. But if you want to develop a really good culture where there is collaboration, that doesn't mean there's not conflict. Conflict comes with the territory. But if you can have a place where there can be really good collaboration, collective bargaining can be really a wonderful experience where you have the opportunity to actually listen to each other and hear each other. There is, as I said, interest-based bargaining, which is a great way to do it, which avoids a lot of that traditional kind of passing paper across the table conflict. So there's definitely ways to do it, to answer your question. Things that don't have to do with employee relations, there are definitely policy ways to address things. How you relate to your community is up to you. But it boils down to really, you're going to set the temperature for the culture in your districts. And if you want, to be angry people, you could be angry people, but that tend to not work out. But if you listen and you really try to, if your heart's in the right place trying to foster a good culture, you're going to find the conflicts start melting away and it becomes much more collaborative. So anyway, great question. Thank you.
The last 3 years, we've had interest-based bargaining, and we have been negotiating, and it's been a pretty short process. It's been pretty amicable, and so it's been a nice change the last 3 years. Those are public meetings, public sessions, so the public can attend and witness what is going on, and I would recommend it. It's pretty interesting to see.
John?
I do have a question real quick. Can we meet as a board, can we meet as a board to listen to the community? Can we answer questions? How do we?
Yes, just post it.
Okay.
Post what the purpose of it, like you want to have an agenda that, we're meeting, it's a work session, a listening session, and get it posted within whatever is it 48 hours, Allison? And everybody have that posted? You absolutely can.
48 hours for a regular meeting or a work session type of thing, 24 for a special. The other thing I think that's important to note is just don't make any votes or decisions in that meeting unless that was noted on the agenda. So that's, I think, the most important part, right, is have the listening session, but don't go into a discussion, motion, that side of things, unless you specifically had on the agenda that you were going to do that.
And don't we need discussion items specified? Don't we need to specify what we're talking about?
The general topic at the least has to be on the agenda, yes.
And if you were wanting to make a decision about something, but you wanted to have the listening session ahead of that, you could have that as a discussion, listening session. You can list something as an action item, and maybe you decide you're not going to act. But without it listed as an action item, you for sure cannot act. John.
Hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate you guys taking your Saturday to come all the way up here and help us out. So really appreciate that. Just wanted to see if I could get a clarification on something. A couple weeks ago, I was privileged to give a presentation down at CV on manufacturing education. I've been involved with the best program in the nation, I believe, the one that has the greatest ROI, and we're trying to get that started down at CV. And prior to that presentation, I was hearing a little bit of talk about, I had invited all the community that we could get, the board members, and there was some comments being made about, could the 5 board members attend my presentation? Because they were all in the room at the same time, and And moving forward, we're going to have more meetings, maybe on trips and other things. So could you clarify for us what these board members can do outside of board meetings? Can they meet at basketball games? Can they come to presentations? What could they do?
In the case of presentations, if all 5 board members were invited and you believe they are all going to be there, you get it posted that there is an event or a meeting or I don't know, a conference. So if you all decide that you want to go to a conference that helps you with professional development, you post that. Board members will be participating in XYZ, and you get that out 48 hours before. And again, there's no action, and you can even put that on there. No decisions will be made, or this is not an action item, but the board members will be at, whatever that is. I'm looking around any other.
But generally, you post that as a meeting of a quorum. I think in the sense of basketball games or other school activities, it's not illegal for all 5 of them to be at the basketball game. It could get illegal quickly if all 5 are in the corner talking about the quality of the coach. And I think a lot of times for board members, it's not just simply, did I violate the law here, but is there a public perception? And so, I would tend to, as a board member, only sit by one board member at a time, so to speak. So it doesn't even give the public a reason to be concerned. But board members can be friends, they can be cordial, and I think if there's a special event, a presentation, it's great to post there's a meeting of a quorum that's going to be there for this purpose. Then the posting would say what the purpose was, for them to listen, for them to support, participate.
I think the threshold adding on to that, Phil, would be something that was very specific, planned, that everyone was invited to. Otherwise, you're not going to post that you're all going to the grocery store on Saturday. You don't know where people are going to show up and where you're going to be. That's not what it's about. But if there's something very specific, intentional, a conference, a specific presentation that that a quorum of the board might be at, think about it in those terms, and then the rest is you're just living your life. You happen to all be at the bank one day, that's just how it is.
Thank you.
I think you've got to.
So this is kind of directed towards CV because that's my wheelhouse. But anyway, we had a town hall meeting at the beginning of the school year, which was amazing. The board members put that on, and the community came, and we were able to talk with you, and you were able to talk with us, which just really felt good in this time of uncertainty. I'm wondering if we're going to be able to do more of those, where the community, just our community, comes with our board. It was, as a teacher, it was very nice to speak with community members in a, I can't just go knocking door to door. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I suppose I could. I don't feel comfortable. It is Idaho, and a lot of people don't like that. So, but being able to talk to community members about what we're doing in our classrooms and kind of get rid of those misconceptions about the things that we're teaching felt amazing. And so I'm wondering, are we planning to do any more of that? And how can we get involved with that?
We don't currently have any on the agenda, but if it's something you want, I'm sure the board would be willing to do additional meetings of that nature.
Thank you, good question. I enjoyed that time. On behalf of the board, I would facilitate those anytime. So when, with our schedules, so I invite, I can talk with them and we can put something together. So as a interim superintendent, I'm fine with that, and I can support that and facilitate that.
Hi. This is slightly off topic, but we have the experts here, so I'm going to ask it. I am an employee of the district, but I am asking this as a parent, as a community member. In the past, when we have run levies, I have been confused, concerned, uneducated on the lack of the information that is put out as far as numbers, what those numbers are, why we need those numbers, what's going to be cut specifically, very kind of black and white. I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say about the law behind what it is that the school can put, or the school districts can put out as far as in the media. I know that there was talk in the past few years can the school put a sign out on their property to promote the levy? No, we can't even do that. Can you speak a little bit about what it is that can be put out there so that the public knows, hey, this is what's going to be cut if we don't have this, or, things like that?
The district can share any information related to what will be voted on. And they can also share what implications will be if the levy is passed, these things, or if the levy doesn't pass, these things. They can even promote the election date. They can say, we're encouraging you to go vote. But they cannot promote anything that is a decision point. Go vote yes or go vote no. And any type of advocacy that leads to a decision vote, but encouraging, they can have, marquees that say, don't forget to vote on Tuesday. That is encouraging people to do their civic responsibility. And sharing information and data, they can send things out to parents, they can talk about the facts, they can share, this is what you're going to see at the ballot when you show up, here's what you will be voting on, here are the reasons why we have put this forward, this is important for these reasons. So any and all of those things can be shared in any of the channels, so long as it's not on the front door of the school, a big sign that says vote yes on Tuesday. Yeah.
So one of the things that I really have to be careful is we have to remain very neutral in how we promote a levy. And I do hold annual meetings with the community, I do 2 different evenings. I also do a Zoom meeting for parents who could not attend or community members. The one thing I'm very careful is I am very black and white. There are usually 4 or 5 big ticket items that we're asking a supplemental levy to support. Genesee runs a supplemental levy. And so usually your big things are your salary and your benefits of your staff, special education, transportation, those kind of things. And our budget is open to the public. You can ask to see your district budget at any time. And I am very black and white about, this is what we have in our budget, this is what the state reimburses us, this is the difference. And that usually will add right up to what I am asking in a levy. So it's very transparent that is exactly where our money is going to go to the community.
I would add one thing. So if the citizens of the community want to see more financial support for the schools, you need a capable citizens committee to lead that effort. And while the public funds cannot be used to advocate, private funds can. And generally communities that have a lot of community support for their public schools have a citizens committee that helps do that advocating.
I'll be quick. Although there is a law that restricts the school districts from advocating for a levy, there's nothing that restricts the staff from advocating for the levy. And oftentimes it's very important for staff being on the front lines of education. They know very well what the needs are for those students. And so just want to make that point.
Just don't use your teacher email, your school district email. But yes, as an employee of the district, you can have a vote yes sign or whatever you choose, sign or communications, just not using your school materials and email.
Can I make a point of over here? Can I make a point of clarification on, I believe, in relationship to the question that she asked, in terms of the ballot, and I believe part of her question here in the past, you can't put on the ballot what's going to be cut. You can only put on the ballot what we're going to support. And so there was some misconceptions there. And so if you put it in the past, if you put it on the ballot as a cut, then that's a fear tactic and a threat, And so I think what she's maybe asking in addition to that line of questioning is, what can that ballot say to special ed teachers, because what we get is the operations budget or salaries or general fund, we get the category and not really what's going on in there. And that may allude to what Mr. Gore was saying, with the Citizens Community Committee, but can we clarify that portion a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to ballot language. So ballot language is actually identified very specifically in code. So if you were to look at what's on the ballot and say, I wish there was more, it's written for that specific purpose. So what happens after that outside of the ballot language is that education portion that happens, where district staff are able to educate voters, and I'm going to use that term very clearly, educate versus advocate, what it is, what the impacts could be, where the dollars, how was it calculated. But the ballot language itself is very standard. That's cut and dry. Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up? Who's the we?
Yeah.
The board can have some of those conversations. The district has to, again, very much toe the line of education versus advocacy. And so that discussion often happens of what is going to be on the agenda, why are we asking for these things, so that that education can happen public, so that you as voters are able to make your decisions as to what would help.
Now, if the local paper did an interview of the superintendent about the upcoming election for a levy, what does this look, the natural questions that our media would ask, that's another way to promote that. I shouldn't say promote, it's another way to educate. See, I got to correct myself too. Tyler.
Yes, because we've had this problem in the past, levies. It must be the law, you can only say what it's for, but there's a discrepancy between what it's for and if it doesn't pass, what the cuts will be, right? So once it's on the ballot, then we're pretty much shut up. I mean, is that kind of how that works?
No, the ballot language is that you can say this is the ballot language, and at a board meeting when you're talking about why you're asking voters to consider supporting it or consider their vote towards it, that's where you can say, here's how we got to this answer. This is what it will look like. So having that discussion,
and we can be upfront with if I know we're saying we're gonna pay for this, and this, but if this doesn't pass, we're actually gonna cut a lot more than what we're saying.
That's information. Those are facts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the best example is always special education, which you brought up. So when we put something on the ballot about special education, and that is what it's going to fund, we can never cut special education after it fails on a levy. I'm just saying, because those are mandatory and we have maintenance of effort. We have to hit the mark that we have to hit. So yes, special education is often underfunded by the state and federal government, and the local agencies have to come up with the money for that. However, when you put that on the ballot, it's important to note that that is not what we're going to cut if that levy fails, because that money is mandatorily spent. So I think that's one of the items that most often comes up.
Well, and in that case, and that is true, and it's always not fun. I mean, that it's often not funded, it's always not funded.
Right.
And so what I would do in that case is when you are talking about options of things that can't be funded, you can say, we won't have the option of cutting back on special education, but here's where we will cut back because we must maintain that. And I think one of the things that is a liability for being a good steward and being a good board member is that we are very good at adjusting. The state comes in and cuts and says, we're going to keep cutting. And our priorities are, we want to make sure we're getting, our kids educated. And I remember this as a board member, when we would put forth levies and school bonds and so forth, we would say, here are the things that are going to have to change. That didn't change. And because we were good at making adjustments, because we don't want it to hurt the people who need it most. So I would say, if you're going to put things out there that are truly on the table to be cut, make sure that it is things that you really would cut, because there's that disconnect of, well, they said they were, but we still have this. And so, that is a needle to thread that board members for all time have been trying to figure that out.
Just a question. I think it was really important what you said, which is, this is what the state pays for, this is what we want. I don't think that I have never seen, as a voter, I've never seen that information ever. So how do you get that out?
It's on our website, all of the levy information. There's been PowerPoints, there's been brochures for the last 4 years. There's been presentations. We've had 2 or 3, what did we call them, town halls or something, where we would meet, and we had like 4 people show up. So we really need to utilize the website. We really need to come to these things that are scheduled. But also, I want that ballot wording. We should not have special education on there because we cannot cut it. So I don't even think it should be a line item on the ballot.
I think you, though, do have to address what you're going to use the money for. That's what your constituents want to know. If we're going to pay these taxes, what are you going to use that money for? Odds are that money is going to be used for special ed with the cost that it is. So I think it's very valid. However, you can't cut. And I think those are when you use the community forums or the Zoom meetings or the recorded things that you're putting out to the constituents that you have to address, that this levy would support special education. We are unable to cut funding to special education, therefore the cuts will be made out of different areas that will affect our students. And it's wonky, I know, and it's difficult for everyone to understand, but that is the bottom line. That even though that levy is going to pay for special ed, every year special ed costs get higher. Our demographics of students coming in our district are different. This year alone, I have one-on-one aides like I've never had before in my district, and costs significant amount of dollars. That takes a large part of my levy. But if I do not get that levy, I'm absolutely going to have to make cuts elsewhere, or we're not going to be able to have those programs. It may not be something that the community sees in general, because it may not affect curriculum, it may not affect athletics or things like that, but there are going to be cuts elsewhere within the district. It might be classroom supplies. It might be the one teacher that retires doesn't get replaced. You're going to have to make up that cost somewhere. And I would recommend that you do address that to your community, and I think it's very transparent that is where the money is going to go. This is what we're going to do. But I am not one that gets out there and says, if you don't pass my levy, this is what I'm going to cut. Because honestly, I don't know at that time what that's going to look like. And like Superintendent Critchfield said, you do your best to try to have the least impact if you have to make cuts in your district to the students. And so you might not be prepared to make that statement right now, how it will affect your district. But by goodness, when you make that decision, you better follow through with it, because the next time you go to the constituents for a levy, they'll say, well, they didn't do anything anyway and we didn't pass it. So you have to be prepared. If you put that line in the sand, that you better be able to follow through with it.
I think it's important to note that when a student comes into a school district with an IEP that dictates what their services are going to be, we don't have the option of saying, no, you don't get those anymore. That comes to us. We hire for those if we have to meet the requirements of that document. That is a legally binding document. So when we talk about budgeting special education, it is always an unknown in some ways. And I'll just make
oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I'll make a quick note about special education. With all the changes at the federal level with the U.S. Department of Education, it is a fact that they are taking pieces of that apart, dismantling it. Some goes away, some gets moved, except for one area of education, special education. They are not touching that. Most of those laws live within the Office of Civil Rights. In the 70s, Congress decided that getting an education, regardless of where you live, what your needs were, was akin to a civil right. And so the district must support those students first. So we have 100% of the rules, and the federal government sends us 6%.
Federal government less than 20.
20.
State will do 6.
Sorry, 20% of the cost in the state is 6. So guess where the rest of that gets made up? Right here in this community, or it comes from other programs. That's another day's community meeting, but I'm hot on the fact that we are killing our small communities around the state because of the burden. No, we want to educate kids, but the federal government has not kept up at all with any of the rules or the funding around all of the rules. Sorry.
And I would just say, oftentimes financial discussions only happen when we want to sit down and talk about the budget. And every month a financial report might be presented, and what happens, that becomes, it's easy. Like as a finance person, I don't really enjoy standing up in front of people and talking. And so oftentimes a financial report is presented, the board will quickly review it, but I think these conversations where you sit down and try to have real discussion about what it means, and so I would encourage that. As the financial report happens, take 5 minutes and talk about the financial report and how it impacts kids, and how here are some of the things that voters or board members or even people who work at the school district might not understand how the budget works and the financial impacts. Because then when we do get to levy conversations, we've had a lot more discussion then. And it's not easy, it's not super exciting. If you watch it online, you'll be bored, I'll just tell you. But right, I think that education is helpful. And then those conversations happen monthly, quarterly, annually, so that when we get to these tougher times, we've all built an educational base.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Kelly Wilson. I had questions along the levy, specifically with the School District Facilities Fund. Mountain View School District 244, we passed a 2-year supplemental levy 2 years ago. Ballot language, $180,000 per 100,000. School district facility fund money comes in. It's unknown how much that's going to offset the property tax. We appreciate the property tax relief from the legislature. Our tax bills come out December 25, and we're paying $114. Idaho County's a blue collar, hard working, where the specifics of the dollars and cents matters a lot. So I'm curious if there's any discussion in the legislature or the Department of Ed about building more transparency or more information up front about those school district facility funds, and some flexibility on how those can be used if there's not a supplemental levy. If we pass a supplemental levy, school district facility funds come in and offset the initial portion, and then there's flexibility. If we don't pass a supplemental levy, we're very restricted in where those funds still come to the district, but we're very restricted. It's taken a lot of time to research and learn this, and it's difficult to educate the community, I think, on this and bring that transparency to our taxpayers and our communities. So I just was curious what the conversations are. And then I've got one other specific question about ballot language for District 246. I've heard that there were people that went into the ballot box and they didn't realize that the levy they were voting on in November was to replace that prior Mountain View levy that was 2 years. And I know that existing districts can have ballot language that say that replaces that. Are we limited at all where we're going from District 244 to 246 in what we can have on the ballot to make it clear that it's replacing the prior 2-year levy?
For that question,
Thank you.
I don't think so, but we will find out. Yeah, we'll get back to you. And sir, I compliment you for knowing so much about all the funding streams. School finance is complex and will give you a headache real quick. For your question about conversations at the legislature around flexibility with school funding, I can tell you that I have been an advocate for that for 3 years, and the legislative side is less sympathetic to the local control. I don't know how else to say that. I would encourage all of you in this room to talk to your elected officials about why that's important to you, that you have elected board members and they have a statutory authority to spend those dollars that come to them, and you need to maximize the dollars that come to you in the ways that fit your community best. So I would love more on the team of local flexibility and control.
I've been wondering if there's a way around that. Could we use the previous year's buy down to make the number on the ballot look representative of what it actually is per 100,000?
Good question. Unfortunately, no. There is some specific language around that the House Bill 292 money that you're referring to that falls through the waterfall provisions and basically used to reduce the taxes. There's a lot of discussion around that language can't be embedded as part of the ballot language. And so, because that could lead to confusion for people at the ballots. So in that case, really, it's the current ballot language you have in place. I'll tell you, a lot of the House Bill 292 dollars, like those don't even come to school districts until July and August because there's calculations at the state level. So they often don't know the dollar amount that's going to come to offset the property taxes until pretty close to they come and have an L2 form discussion at your board meetings.
All of these things are addressed by the legislature, and so I think for your boards to talk about what works well for you, write it down, invite your legislators to have a conversation with you and say this will help us manage and communicate with our patrons better. Let's get them on board to help. I am just absolutely blown away that you've sat on the bleachers for almost 3 hours. And just in the final minutes, are there any last questions or comments?
Hi, I'm Fred Stevens. Thanks so much for this presentation today. It's been really, really informative. I'm not sure if you can respond to this, but I know there's been, and I believe Wendy referenced this in a comment, there's just been an explosion in special ed qualified children. And I'm just curious about the statutorial guidelines and testing and requirement, because I know I've heard from a lot of people that's just creates a huge financial and personnel and consequently wage burden on local districts.
The federal government determines the criteria whereby a student can be eligible for services, and any parent can ask that their child be evaluated for those services. And this year's kindergarten class is what we would call COVID babies. They're the children that were born during COVID. They're coming to school a little bit differently. We have students who have never held a pencil, who don't recognize a letter, don't know a color. Some are not potty trained. They haven't shared, they haven't stood in line. There's a lot of learning that's taking place in the classroom on top of the academic side. We see a growing number of students who have needs beyond what would just be, I guess, traditional academic supports. And as we see changes in students and in families, and they come into classrooms, and parents will say, or teachers may recommend that their students be evaluated, there is a pretty rigorous process and expensive just to go through identifying whether or not they are eligible for services. And once the criteria is met, the school is obligated to provide those services. And And we are seeing more students come that are eligible for services based on behavior, and that impacts their academics. We also have a variety, it's a very wide spectrum of what those needs are. In every single district around the state, we do see just overall societal changes and needs of kids contributing to that. Allison?
And we're not alone. It's all across the country. Same thing. And as Superintendent Critchfield said, it is a challenge because we have more students coming into the system needing special education support, and the federal law is really quite tight around how students are identified, what that process is, and then the expectations once they are. So the unfortunate reality is that we can't say to you, oh yes, we can give you flexibility on that, because it is tightly defined in federal law.
We have federal Head Start. Right, it's federal or state?
Federal.
Okay. And I just feel like that could be improved. Is there any talk at the state level of improving those programs?
Well,
to serve those
because
people?
those are federal dollars, I can tell you that last week when Congress approved the latest spending, education was a part of that, and Head Start was approved. There was a time where it was Head Start going to be on the chopping block at the federal level, but they did not. And so that's a great thing for this community and for communities across the state. I think it really underscores that early learning piece, Wendy spoke about earlier, and also connecting parents to resources for learning. How do we empower parents with their 0 to 5 or whenever they hit a formal setting for education? Local libraries and other resources that connect parents with learning for their kids. And we're also working with teachers on classroom management and behavioral health supports. How do we de-escalate situations? We've got to also prepare our teachers with tools for the classroom settings so that it doesn't take away from the learning of other students in the classroom. This is it is a complex issue that we must talk about, and there are financial implications in districts and will be while we're talking about it. And I'll just quickly say that at the legislative level, we're advocating for 3 things. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but for 3 things that would help you in this community. 2 are related specifically to special education, and another flexibility within your local budget. And so I'd love, we'll get information to your superintendents. We'd love for you to help us advocate with your legislators for them to be supportive of that. It's intended to help you. It doesn't help me. It doesn't give me $1 more. It doesn't help me at the Department of Education. All 3 things that we are advocating for come directly to you as a benefit to you as local board members. So, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
One quick comment on the Head Start program. While all that's federal, I also want to remind people that only half of our kindergartens are only funded by the state for half day. The districts are coming up with the funding for the other half to allow those students to go full day, full time. So, and I had one other thing. I would like to have the teachers and the school employees stand up to be recognized. We appreciate how much you contribute to the education of our students.
Thank you, Trustee Teets. That was well done. I will close out and then turn it back over to our chair people. I just want to commend your trustees here. What an impressive model around the state for other board members who want to do their job well. They care about you. They care about this community. You don't see this happen anywhere in the state, where on a Saturday morning after a long weekend of the day job that they support themselves by, that they're willing to come and ask questions, and it's all to serve the community, the teachers, and the kids better. I can't applaud you enough for doing that.
I just wanted to say, we have about 1,100 kids in our district, and I'd like the student that came this morning and has been sitting for 3 hours to please stand up. She deserves a round of applause too.
Thanks for letting us be along for the ride.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again. That was incredibly helpful. We appreciate all your time, and yeah, thank you.